David Ham for Yom Sheni, Vav Tavshin Pei, the sixth Perek of Yesodei HaTorah. So today we're returning to learning together. After the previous 2 days, I did record Perek Rabbi and Perek Chamishi, and you can get the copies of the recordings if you'd like. So in Perek Rabbi, we concluded the discussion of the first 5 mitzvahs of knowing Hashem, loving Hashem, etc. And in Perek Chamishi, the subject was Kiddush Hashem and Chil Hashem, was a more halachic discussion. And now we're moving on to mitzvah number 8. Mitzvah number 8 is not to destroy things that are connected to Hashem. And that includes Hashem's name itself. We'll see in halachas Aleph through Vav. Also the Mizbeach and other parts of the Beis HaMikdash, as we'll see in halachas Zayin. And generally the holy writings, Shemus, what we call Shemus, and halacha Ches and Tes. So let's begin. Halacha Aleph. Whoever destroys the name of the holy special names that Hashem is called gets malchus because he did an avera from the midiraisa. You should destroy their name from that place in Eretz Yisrael, but don't do that, Hashem your God. So what do we see here? So we see that the point of destroying the Avodah Zarah is that you're trying to fight the Avodah Zarah. You're trying to make sure it's forgotten. So if you do the same, if you treat Hashem the same way, so we interpret that you're doing the same thing to Hashem. It's terrible. You're trying to eradicate Hashem. And that's also why it fits in here with Kiddush Hashem and Chil Hashem. It touches on... I think the context there is they're going into Eretz Yisrael and they're going to find a lot of Avodah Zarah in Eretz Yisrael. Apparently you have to destroy Avodah Zarah from wherever you are. The Chiddush was in the Midbar, there's no Avodah Zarah. They're coming to Eretz Yisrael, will be Avodah Zarah. I guess it's not apparently not limited specifically to Eretz Yisrael. Now, what Shemus are we talking about? So that's what Halacha Beis is about. So V'shiva Shemus Hain. There are 7 names. Number 1, Hashem HaNichtav Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, V'hu Hashem Meferish. The name that's written with the letters Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, and that's Hashem's main name. Oya Nichtav Aleph Daled Nun Yud, or Aleph Daled Nun Yud, which is how we read it, and you write it Aleph Daled Nun Yud. That's all considered as 1 for the purpose of this list. Then number 2, V'Kel, V'Elikav, V'Elikim, Aya, V'Shin Daled Yud, Tzvois. If you erase even 1 letter from these 7 names, you get Malchus. So, so for some reason the first 2 are counted as 1. And now when it comes to the 5th name, so I read Aleph Yud Hey, but that's what the Kisvei Yad say. But actually it's a big story here, a big deal here. Because although the manuscripts say that name, but most prints say Velikei as the 5th name. So it's Kel, Elika, Elikim, Elikei. And the Kesef Mishnah, who's one of the big Mefarshim on the Rambam, is written by the Beis Yosef, the Mechaber of the Shulchan Aruch, and he goes systematically to explain all the Makaris of the Rambam and to answer any big questions. So he comments on this and he discusses the different Gersayos, and it's actually a whole Sikha from the Rebbe about this in the Chelik Chavav, look at the Sikhas Shmois Beis, about it not being counted, the Rebbe's talking about the Pasuk in Shmois, and the Rebbe's saying that that's not on the list, and even A itself is not on the list, and he quotes the Kesef Mishnah that says actually it's a discussion, but the Rebbe's conclusion is that the main gear says not this name, and the Rebbe goes, the whole Sikh is based on that assumption to explain that, and the Rebbe explains that this name is based on a Vart and Mar Nevuchim of the Rambam, that this name is completely higher than this whole world. It's Hashem the way He is without any world. Whereas all the other names are a way to express how Hashem interacts with the world. So when you talk about Hashem, when you talk about Kedusha, that's something that exists in this world, but it's special, but it's holy. So those are the other Shemus. But the Shem of Aya is so great that it wouldn't even make it to the list. So that's what the Rebbe goes with for the purpose of that Sikha. The name Tzvois, so first just wanted to point out, just like there's an issue with erasing and writing, so there's also an issue with saying these names. And there's different... either even Stamazai to say it, or if you're quoting from a sefer, or you're having a halachic discussion, there's different minhagim, how you change the different names when you speak, and there's also different minhagim actually of how to change them if you're writing them. And just to point out, the Gabi Tzvais, the Rebbe explicitly said that our minhag is not to say Tzvakais to change the name. And in Shulchan Menachem, with the Malaket, all the things, all the halachic things that Rebbe spoke about, they're Mitzayin, to other Achreinim that also talk about how the some attack say Tzvakais, but there's also plenty of testimony to that. There was a minhag not to be makbar on Tzvakais, that Rebbe says, because it's also a regular word that can be other things. And when it says erasing even 1 letter, Question is, why? Why even erasing one letter? Is this like a lumdisha thing? That even if you just erase a little bit, most of the name is still there. Is it just that even erasing a little bit is a problem? Or are we saying that the second you erase one letter, it's like the whole name is not really a name anymore? It's just a bunch of letters left. Maybe the nafkamina would be if someone came to erase the next letter. Well, I'm just going to bring up, as we learn halachic topics, I'm going to bring up certain points in an open-ended way, and Shainim Achreinim, Farshim might talk about these things lamaisa. So now that we spoke about the names themselves, but in Hebrew sometimes you have letters at the beginning of a word, letters at the end of a word, prefixes, suffixes. So how does that work? Do they have kedusha or not? So Rambam says, Kol nitzpal l'shem elafanav, any letter that's attached in the beginning, mutar l'machka, you can erase it. For example, lamed me la Hashem, ubeiz me beilekim, or anything like that. Einem kedushas Hashem, it does not join the kedusha of Hashem's name. You can erase it, no problem. Now, maybe the chiddush here is that with La Hashem and Beilekim, in both cases, the first letter actually got the nekuda of the first letter of Hashem's name. Like La Hashem, is the La Doi, you skip the patach of the aleph, or Beiloi, you skip the aleph. The aleph sort of merges into the lamed of the base. Maybe you'd think that it becomes part of the name. The Kamash Malon, that not. Apparently, we still look at it as if it's like two words. Like instead of saying El Hashem, so it says La Hashem, so the La is still like El, it's still like a separate thing, and then you have Hashem's name. But whatever is attached to Hashem's name at the end, Kaf Shela Elikecha, so instead of Elikim, it says Elikecha, but Kaf Mem Shela Elikechem, in those cases, Einin Nimchakim. You can't erase them. Is considered like part of Hashem's name, because the name of Hashem makes them holy.
What's the proof? You're saying by prefix.
Right, so I'll try to.
By prefix,
yeah.
you could. By suffix, you can't.
Right, I'll try to explain in a second. Let me just finish the last two lines, and then I'll try to explain what I think. However, when we say that you're not allowed to, it's not the same as regular letters of Hashem's name. And it's polis. If you erase these letters at the end, the suffix, you don't actually get malchus. You get beat. It's a chacham give you a beating. It's not the same thing. Now, what is the difference? Here also you could suggest that it's really a separate word, elikim shelcha. So maybe the difference here is that here it actually fully replaced a letter of Hashem's name. So let's say the name elikim, there should be a mem there. But we took out the mem and we put in a different letter. And in the way the language of Hebrew works, it allows us to erase a letter in that way. It's not disrespectful to Hashem's name that we're taking out the mem and we're putting in a different letter. But by going there, it sort of replaced the mem and acquired the properties of the mem. It's also part of Hashem's name. On the other hand, though, the Rambam says that you don't get malchus, you get malchus mardus. So apparently, it's not quite on the same level as Hashem's name. So if you had to rank it, so I would say, if you erase the mem of Hashem's name, so that's mamish, you just erased part of Hashem's name. If you replace the mem with a chaf, so, makes sense. So that's not a problem. You still have Hashem's name completely, even though the mem is missing. This is a complete, it's as if it says alikim completely. If I erase that chaf, and seemingly it's the same thing as if I would have just erased the mem. So two people start off, one starts off with the name Elikim, one starts off with the name Elikecha, one person erases the mem, one person erases the chaf. It's the same result, but here he erased mamish a letter of Hashem's name. And here, apparently, he didn't erase, it wasn't mamish, it replaced the letter of Hashem's name. Not exactly the same thing. Okay, that's the halacha. So now we spoke about erasing Hashem's name. What about someone who wrote only part? We spoke about erasing part of Hashem's name. Then what about someone who wrote part of Hashem's name? Kos Dalet, Kos of Aleph Lamed Me Elikim. And the person wrote the first two letters of Hashem's name Elikim, Aleph Lamed, or Yud K Me Yud K Vav K, Ein Nemchak, can't be erased. Ve'ein Sarach Leimar Ka. And that goes without saying that if you wrote Ka, Shu Shem B'fnei Atzma, it's a name in its own right, because this is part of the Shem Nefarish. Now, this is a little unclear. I'll explain. Let me conclude off. Case of Shin Dalad, Min Shin Dalad Yud, or Tzadik Beis, Mitzvahs. If you write the first two letters of those names, that could be erased. That's not holy. So the Halach is talking about the concept that there are short words that could be part of longer words, but he mentions Yud K twice. There's Yud K as part of Hashem, there's Yud K on its own. There's also interesting Hasaga of the Ravid here. The Ravid jumps on the Rambam and says, this is nothing. Shalai amru ela ba'alaf lamed me'elikim, v'yud kei me'yud kei vavkei, aval shem v'dalad mishin dalad yud, v'tzadik beis mitzvahs, harei l'nimchakim. Kesef Mishnah says, "Yesh l'tamaya." This is strange. The Ravid just repeated back to the Rambam exactly what the Rambam just said. He said, "Zeni klum," and he repeated it back. So we're actually not going to get into what the Ravid is arguing about. But what's the Rambam saying here? What are these two things that Rambam is saying? So let's start with the second thing. If you write Yud K could be its own name. It could be the name of Hashem because it's considered like a kitzer of Yud K Vav K. If you want to refer to Yud K Vav K, you could just say Yud K, and that stands in for Yud K Vav K. And for that reason, it's not counted as its own name in Halacha Beis because it's like a stand-in for Yud K Vav K. But it also has the same kedusha. Whereas Aleph Lamed was counted separately in Halacha Beis because it's its own name in its own right. It's not a kitzer of Elikim, the way Yud K is sort of a kitzer of Yud K Vav K. Kel, Elikan, Elikim are all three different names of Hashem that all happen to be very similar and come from the same root. Okay, so that's the second thing that Rambam said, that Yud K is a kitzer of Yud K Vav K. It's like represents the Shem and Ferish. Now, in the beginning, the Rambam said that even if you were planning on writing the full name, Yud K Vav K or Elikim, you didn't want to just write Yud K as a stand-in for Yud K Vav K. You wanted to write Yud K Vav K. And then you stopped in the middle. So we say the Chiddush is that it's also Kodesh right away because Seif Kol Seif, this is also Hashem's name, whereas Shin Daled and Tzadik Beis are meaningless on their own.
But that's Aleph Lamed can be Kale, but it could also be the word El. So it depends on your kavanah.
Right, but your kavanah was to write Hashem's name.
To write Kale.
Your kavanah was to write Elikim, which is Hashem's name, and Kale came out so far.
By itself is Hashem's name. If you put a Seireg,
yeah.
Right, but if you put a segol or komatz,
right. But you don't have to write Nakudus in order to.
No, I'm saying in meaning to say that was your intention, not Hashem's name. You're using it as a word in itself.
Obviously, if you just wrote Aleph Lamed just for anything, then it's obviously not a problem. That's not.
So
you were planning on writing a Lekim, and you wrote Kel, and even though you were planning on writing a Lekim, the Kel itself also becomes a shame, even though you were on the way to writing something longer. Okay. Obviously, some of these things are more complex. We're trying to say it in a simple, straightforward manner as possible. What about all the other nicknames for Hashem? So in Halacha Hey, the Ram talks about all the other nicknames, the names we use for Hashem to praise Hashem. Kegoin, Chanun, Verachum. Hashem gives grace. Hashem is merciful. Agadol, Giver V'Aneira. Hashem is great, powerful. He's awesome. Haneman is trustworthy. Kana v'chazak. He acts with certain zealousness. He's strong. Chayetzeben. All these kinds of kinuim that you find. Harein k'shar divrei hakodesh. They're like any other holy thing. Umutu l'machkan, and you could erase them. So what we mean here is in terms of writing that it could be erased. Obviously, if it's inside the Torah, then we're going to see later in Halacha Ches. You can't just erase. You can't just be disrespectful towards the Sefer of Torah either.
Not Mitzvah Hashem's name.
Not Mitzvah Hashem's name, right? So, but it's not Hashem's name, and that means you might be able to erase it if you want to, to fix it, as we'll see later, the difference between Hashem's name and other things. So, and also when it comes to speech, you might have a different din. Some of these things might be, you might not be allowed to say them in an inappropriate place. Look into that. Now the Rambam is using Lashonis from the Psukim, but of course we have additional names for Hashem. We call Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hamakim, Habayra, Hashem, in Yiddish, Yavoy Bishter, and all these things, even though they replace Hashem's name completely, it's not introducing Hashem's actual name, we're just replacing Hashem's name, but it doesn't actually acquire the Kedusha of Hashem's name, and that's the whole idea. You're able to give words that are not holy that still refer to Hashem, and we're talking about Hashem.
In Yiddish or in English, Eibush is one thing.
Right. That's a different question because sometimes it might be the Shem HaEtzem. That's a whole discussion. It doesn't come up in the Rambam here, so let's not get into that. It comes up in the Alter Rebbe, and the Rebbe talks about it. Yeah. So those are not, it's not a problem. They're not wholly like Hashem's names. Okay, so now we're going to continue Halacha Vav, where he's going to explain that it's not just things that are written down on a paper. It could be written, the word can appear anywhere technically, and you'll have an issue. So Halacha Vav, the Rambam says, Klisha Yashem, Kasov Alav, Koitzis is Mekem Hashem v'Goinzoi. If there was a kli that had Hashem's name written on it, you cut out the part of the Shem, and you have to put in Gniza. Even if it was engraved on metal or on glass, and you melted it, you would also be punished with malchus. It's the same thing. You're destroying Hashem's name. You have to cut it out and you have to bury it. Now, when he says kli, so first of all, maybe today it's not as common. I think in archaeology you'll find more often that the vessels had inscriptions on them, but it doesn't really matter if whether it's common or not. The whole chiddush is that it doesn't really matter where it's written at all. And by the way, kli could mean a beged. It's not from the word kaitzitz. It might mean that the Rambam is talking about clothing. It doesn't really matter. It's really any object. And now Goinzer, the Rambam mentions Goinzer. This is the first place where the Rambam is mentioning the idea of geniza with shemus. It's going to get mentioned later as well. And it sounds like the Rambam is saying you should do it right away. If you get this object in your possession, you should immediately cut out Hashem's name and not use it with Hashem's name on it. That wouldn't be appropriate. So until now we were just talking about erasing, but
if you have a becher with the whole let's say they made such a becher.
Right.
So that you could use that becher, but you're not allowed to destroy it, or you're not allowed to.
Right.
It would have to be buried because that's shameless.
Right. The question is whether you could use it. Is it appropriate to write out Hashem's name like that on the becher? And that might not be appropriate.
They have that by Talasim. A lot of them, they have the talk of the talis across the.
But do they write the shame like a shame? They probably don't.
They usually write something
Yeah, you write usually Yud K.
No, Yud.
Yeah, usually people, we just try to avoid problems and we don't put Hashem's name anywhere unnecessarily. So here we're introducing this additional concept that it's not just you have to be careful with Hashem's names in terms of erasing it. You also have to treat it appropriately, and it's not appropriate to just have it all over the place, even if you're not erasing it. So we're making both points. But afterwards, though, the Rambam is saying that if you do cut it out, you would be allowed to use it. It's not like the whole vessel, the whole thing became kaddish. If you cut it out, then you would be allowed to use the rest of it. And when the Rambam said afilu, that it's metal, so what's the chiddush here? Why is this destroying different than any other destroying? That it's because it's on metal. So it could be the chiddush is that when you're melting it, so you didn't target the actual words. You didn't take the words and do something to them. You sort of just melted the whole thing, and the words automatically disappeared along with the whole thing. So the chiddush is, I know this is total hashchasa. If you were trying to destroy Avodah Zarah, you would also melt if you saw. You can't do that to Hashem's name. I'm saying it's just like a shchas, like anything else. That's the chiddush. That doesn't matter that you melted it and it's sort of a little indirect. No, it's still the same. Malchus, Harezaleka, no difference. Now he continues and says, what if you have Hashem's name inscribed on your skin? Tattoos, even worse, yeah. But if you have it written on you, so first of all, you shouldn't wash yourself and you shouldn't rub anything on it because that might erase it. And you shouldn't stand in a dirty place. That's the din of respect. What if you have to toivel? You have to go into the water. So so you wrap gmi around it. I saw some of that gmi in those days came from the papyrus, the same plant that they made papyrus for writing. That was also what they used for, I guess, today gmi is used for rubber. So you wrap something around it to cover it, and then you go into the mikveh. And if you didn't find gmi, mesabiv achrov, you go around looking for it. Now there's another girsa of gadav, but we're going with mesabiv achrov. You go around looking for it. You have to find it. But don't make it too tight, so it shouldn't become a chatzitza. If you make it too tight, then you have a chatzitza. You created a new problem. So why are you putting it on then? The reason is we're not concerned about it getting erased. The reason why we're telling you to cover it when you go to the mikveh is for the other problem. It's disrespectful to stand undressed in front of Hashem's name. Now it's on you. So whenever you're undressed, you're automatically standing in front of Hashem's name. So that's why you have to cover it, but loosely, so it's not a chatzitza. He said lo yerchitz. That's what he said.
So how does a person who, let's say, about Shraga, who has the tattoo,
but they don't have a shampoo.
That's a shaila for a rav. I don't know how to remove it. I don't know. It's a problem. Big problem. Don't do it.
Can you do laser removal, right?
That would also be mechika. That would be erased. You have no solutions there. Yeah.
I've
So,
never seen someone writing his name on the screen. Never seen it. How could you do that?
okay.
Huh?
Yeah.
Unimaginable.
Yeah. So now we continue to halacha Zion. So from Shemus Akdoshim, which was halacha Aleph through Vav, now we move on to other holy things that are not Shemus, actually holy objects. So if you destroy, you break even one stone from the Mizbeach in a manner of destruction, or from the building, the Heichal is the building of the inside, or the Hazar is around the building, like you also get Malkus, because there's another Leisasim. There's 3 Leisasims as we're going to see. When it comes to Avodah Zarah also, you're going to Eretz Yisrael, you should destroy their altars, the Kosov, and then it says, elsewhere, but in the same context, don't do that to Hashem. If you burn wood of Hektish, also a special Malkus, you should burn their holy trees. So here we see that Rambam introduces this term Derech Hashchasa. So here it's not like erasing, you're automatically being disrespectful to Hashem's name. But when it comes to the Mizbeach, it depends on your intention. If you're trying to fix the Mizbeach, then it would be okay to take something out of the Mizbeach to replace it. You have to, it all depends on your intent. Leisason, right, same idea as before. And Hasayref, so this is interesting that it says you should burn the Asherah. Now, there really isn't any Jewish holy counterpart to the Asherah. We don't have any holy trees. So how should you not do that to Hashem? So that's what we're saying, that it applies to the wood of Hektish. And apparently only in this case. If you burn other stuff of Hektish, you shouldn't do it. That would be Asr, but that wouldn't be this unique Isser. There's a unique Isser for the wood because it said don't do the same thing that you did to the Asherah. And also the Rambam says Derech Hashchasa, destructively. So if it's firewood for the Beis HaMikdash and use it as firewood, so then that would be fine. You're burning Atzei Mikdash for a good reason. This guy just burned it for no reason. Although they do point out there is a tshuva of the Rambam somewhere. There's a whole body besides the Mishnah Torah and the Sefer HaMitzvahs and Moreh Nevuchim. There's also tshuvas of the Rambam, and they're in the order of they actually make it in the order of Mishnah Torah. And somewhere the Rambam seems to write that it actually meant wood for the building, not firewood. So maybe firewood wouldn't have the Isser, wouldn't get the Malkus, only if it's wood for the building. Yeah. And all of these things, yeah. It's not like the erasing Hashem's name, not exactly the same. Now we move on to Shemus in general, holy writings in general. Halacha Ches. So he says, Kisvi HaKodesh Kulon Uperishenu Beirein, so all holy writings and their explanations. Also, Lisrif Oisan Ila Abdon Bayad. It's also to burn them or to personally destroy them. And if you did that, Leikamakas Mardus, it's not the Reis of Lisasum, but it's similar and you get a beating. So it's not clear to me, why biyad?
If it's not biyad, if it's the medial,
maybe that would mean like leaving it in a place where it can rot or something like that. Talking about that you actually did it hands-on as opposed to maybe just being careless with it. And,
machine did it.
Well,
I didn't rip that, I just put it in the paper shredder.
I don't know about that. That would probably be biyad.
On the computer, you have the word that can't be deleted then.
No, so with computers we say it's not ksiva. Right. It doesn't count as ksiva at all. That's how we solve the computer problem. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to ever scroll off the page. Forget about deleting the word. If you scrolled off the page, you would erase Hashem's name.
The word bayad is in the Gemara.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this has nothing to do with Hashem's name specifically. We're talking about the Chalal, that Torah is holy. And when he says Pirishenu Beirein, so that means he's not just talking about Torah Shebechsav, he's talking about any holy sefer, that any sefer is always an extension of explaining the Torah. And what we're saying is that it's Asr, meaning that it's also the kind of Leisasin, right? If you had a sefer of Avodah Zarah, even if it didn't have the Avodah Zarah's name, you would try to destroy, you're trying to get rid of Avodah Zarah from the world. So again, if you do the same thing to Holy Sefer, even if that wasn't your intention, but you're treating it the same way you would treat Avodah Zarah. So, but again, here you are allowed to erase if you need to fix something. It's not like Hashem's name. And for some reason, when it comes to Makas Mardus, he doesn't mention the burning, just as Ma'abed Bayad. I'm not sure if that's Dafka or burning would also be a problem. Not clear. But clearly it's not exactly like the Raisa. So there's one exception though. There's one case where you actually should destroy holy books. When should you destroy holy books? We're talking about normal svarim that were written by a Yid, B'Kedusha, you had in mind, this is a holy sefer. But if there's an Apokritus who wrote a sefer Torah, then we burn it along with the names of Hashem inside. Now, first we're going to explain why it's okay to burn it, and then we'll explain why we want to burn it. So, why is it okay to burn it? He doesn't believe in the sanctity of Hashem's name. But like when he wrote it, he was writing like any other text. So because that was his intent, the name never became holy in the first place. We're going to see in the next halacha that there was a concept back in the time of Tanakh that people used Yud Kei Vav Ken Elikim to refer to other gods. Yud Kei Vav Ken Elikim isn't automatically Hashem's name. There has to be some intention behind it. And since this guy had the opposite intention, it's not holy, you can burn it. Why is it a mitzvah to burn it? We don't want to leave any record of these apokarsim and of their deeds. So, now he's talking about Hashem's name specifically, but obviously we said earlier, now to destroy any part of the Torah, and you would need this reason to defend destroying any part, any sefer that this guy wrote. Now, when we say that it's not holy, if he writes Hashem's name, even if he's not thinking, I'm writing Hashem's holy name, we assume that every Yid who writes Hashem's name, he knows the significance, he knows what it means, what it represents. But that's because we're talking about a normal person. The chiddush here is that an apokritus, if his whole deal is that he's against Hashem, his whole mitzias is against Hashem and against what Hashem's names represent, so then we can assume that any shame that he writes doesn't have that holiness and it's not a problem to burn. And this idea of that we don't want to leave it, or it's a mitzvah to burn it, we don't want to leave it, it's like similar to Avodah Zarah. We keep on talking about you're supposed to destroy anything that has to do with Avodah Zarah. You don't want to leave anything in the world that is going to reinforce that Avodah Zarah. So the chiddush here is that sometimes the words here are very holy to us. But when it comes to this guy, when it comes from this guy, not only is it not an expression of our kedusha, it's an expression of this guy's opposite of Kedusha. And if I'm trying to destroy this guy's Tumah, that includes even technically what our holy words. Now he continues and says that's only specifically with that intention that the Yid is an apokritus, but Stam a goy shekasav Hashem, if a guy writes Hashem's name, and we assume that he wrote it, he did accept Hashem's existence.
They had professional scribes.
Mm-hmm.
They just, in any language, they were able to...
Right.
They
Also,
just had a beautiful handwriting. Right.
Also, the script used to be shared by more nations, so anyone could have written anything. So, the guy who wrote Hashem's name, you have to bury it. And in general, any shemus that starts getting worn out, a guy wrote it, it should be buried.
Well, you have to bury it. You're not allowed to use it. You have to bury it.
So I'm going to comment on that. So first of all, we're saying that if a guy writes it, then it's like any other holy name. Shabalu, when he says that the Kisvei Kodesh got worn out, this is the basic classic din of shemus that we all know, that you have to put shemus in the Geniza. Of course, today there are whole svarim about it. There's so many details and halachas, and sometimes what if something was printed and then no one ever used it as a sefer? Maybe it doesn't have kedusha because the machine printed it. The machine doesn't have kavana, so the machine didn't imbue kedusha into the text, and no one ever learned it as a holy text. So sometimes you could be makel maybe if it's the proofs in a printing press. They think they're always just throwing in the garbage. So there are a lot of halachas, and the Rambam here is all
they throw it in a thing, just
maybe in a bag in the garbage. Yeah. So there are a lot of halachas that all come out of this line in the Rambam. They just mentioned in passing. Now, when he said about the guy, so it's not clear to me. It's
writing.
what's the
Yeah.
Right. So it's not fully clear. It sounds like he's equating either a normal sefer that's worn out, or something that a guy wrote. It sounds a little bit like you should get rid of it right away. So it's not fully clear to me. I have to look into and see what the Shem say. I just want to. There is a related. Right. Right, maybe the assumption is that Stamagoy is probably not fully, he acknowledges Hashem, but not fully in an acceptable way to us. There's actually big halakhic discussions in the last few hundred years about the missionary organizations that used to print the Tanakh, Hebrew Tanakhs, and they were trying to get the Jews to use it, and they thought that somehow maybe there was something of theirs in there that would reel the Jews in. But the Tanakhs happen to be very good. They're very good Tanakhs otherwise. And a lot of Jews were using it. There are a lot of Sfarim that talk about it, and some are very upset, and some say, it could be it's okay. I think the Stei Chemed says that it's okay.
Don't we use the Prokim from the Torah?
Right, there's certain things like that, where like the chapters in Tanakh, the division was a non-Jew, was a Christian division, right? And Christians themselves, what's even the definition of a Christian? I mean, for us, they're apokarsim, but they believe in Hashem, so there's definitely more to explore on this topic.
There's an interesting note here in Ilchot Sefer Torah.
Yeah.
States that a worn Sefer Torah scroll should be placed in an earthenware container and buried next to a Torah sage.
Right, so not just to bury it anywhere, but it's better to bury it next to
worn Sefer Torah.
tzaddik.
Put in an earthen container
Right.
and buried near a tzaddik.
Right, we'll see in Hilchos Sefer Torah when we get there. Okay, so let's finish the last halacha tes. So now we're talking about certain words in Tanakh where there's doubt as to whether it's a holy word or not, or like a special Shem Kodesh, or it's just a regular word. Kol Hashemis Amunis B'Avraham Kodesh. All the Shemis of Hashem that are mentioned in the context of Avraham are holy. Av Zeh Shenamar Alaf Dal Nid Yod Imna Matzasi Chem Beinecha Hareu Kodesh, it's holy. Kol Hashemis Amunis B'Loit. Anything that it says regarding loit is chayil, is not a holy. Alaf Dal Nid Yod Chutz Mizeh Auna Alaf Dal Nid Yod. He didn't know Matzach Avtach Chayin, that is holy. Kol Hashemis Amunis B'Givus Binyamin, a certain story in Shaftim is Kodesh. Kol Hashemis Amunis B'Micha, story in Shaftim as well is chayil. And Kol Hashemis Amunis B'Navos, a story in Malachim are Kodesh. So what's going on here? So first of all, what does it mean Kodesh? The whole Tanakh is Kodesh, but apparently we're talking about, if it's Hashem's name, you can't just erase it in order to fix it. Any other word you could erase in order to fix. So that's why it's important to know these words in Tanakh. If there's a doubt, is it Kodesh or is it not Kodesh? It's a whole brisa in Gemara Shavuos, the whole sugya in Gemara Shavuos. Now it comes to Avram and Light, so they use Aleph Dal Nid Yud, and it's simply not clear. They certainly believed in Hashem. They're not referring to anyone else, but it's not clear if they're talking about Malachim. Well, sometimes when Avram's talking to Malachim, beginning of Vayera, he refers to them as, sounds like maybe he's referring to them as my master. So he says, wherever it says by Avram is Kodesh, wherever it says by Loit is Chayil, except that one place by Loit. Give us Binyamin. So in order to really appreciate what the Rambam is saying here, you really have to see the Gemara there, because there's many more discussions and opinions there about these stories in Tanakh. And the Rambam here is just sort of taking a side and deciding, and it just sounds very simple and straightforward. So for example, the first story of Give us Binyamin. Give us Binyamin is a whole story that the Yidden went to war against Binyamin because a woman got murdered, a whole feud. So it says there, they asked Hashem, should they go to war? Who should go first? So there's an opinion in the Gemara that says that it's not Kodesh, because they weren't asking Hashem, they were asking Avodah Zarah. Like I said, sometimes in those days in Tanakh, the names are interchangeable. A non-believer could use that Yud Kei Vav Kei, maybe vice versa.
In that case, they were asking Avodah Zarah?
Yes, even though it says Yishul B'Hashem, according to that opinion in the Gemara, it might not be Hashem. So the Rambam, that's why the Rambam is saying that it is Kodesh. You have to know the context to know that some said that it's not Kodesh.
The whole thing with the Yom, they wanted to use their own best thing as opposed to listening to a best thing from other shvatim. That was the whole machlok.
Okay, without getting into, it just says that when they went to war, they said who should go, and Hashem said Yehuda should go in front. So there was an opinion that wasn't Kodesh. By Micha, the story of Micha is the story of Pesel Micha, that he had his idol and he had his temple and the whole event that happened there. So it also in that story, he casually keeps on saying Elikim Yud Kei Vav Kei. This is Micha. This is the ultimate Avodah Zarah. So clearly, Kol Hashem is there are Chayil. Now regarding and there's even an opinion in the Gemara that where it says Elikim is Chayil, where it says Havaya is holy. That's what I'm saying. All Chayil. And by Navos, where a Zevel, she wanted his field and she bumped him off, so she accused him that Beirach Navos Elikim V'Melech, that he cursed God and the king. So which God? I mean, she doesn't even believe in Hashem herself. So when she says she's accusing him of cursing Elikim, which Elikim is this? So that's where we're saying that it is Kodesh. Kol Shleim Amar B'Shir Hashirim Kodesh V'Reu Kashari Kinuyim Chutz Mizeh Alfa Chashleimai. Every Shleim in Shir Hashirim is holy, and it's like any other Kinui Chana V'Racham like an Alacha Hey, except Alfa Chashleimai, which is talking about Shleimai himself, the man. And Kol Malchaya Amar B'Daniel Choil. Every Malchaya and Daniel is Choil Chutz Mizeh Ant Malka Melech Malchaya V'Reu Kashari Kinuyim. Now, Shleima is already not a real name of Hashem, so not the same discussion we had before about Yud Kevavkin Elikim, but we have this idea that every Shleima in Shir Hashirim is holy. So what's the pshat? So Kesef Mishnah is saying it's Lagabe speaking, that you can use it for a shvuah and say, I make you swear by Shleima from Shir Hashirim. It's also Sikha from the Rebbe talks about Melech and Megillas Esther versus Shleima and Shir Hashirim, how it's not the same thing. Shleima and Shir Hashirim actually halachically has some significance as Hashem's name, whereas Melech and Megillas Esther, we say that it refers to Hashem also, but it's not the same thing. Okay.